to day 99, which was spectacular in our nation's capital. But day one, as you remember, was cold and gray back in January when the president took the oath of office and spoke of American carnage and rattled the establishment with these words.
Washington flourished, but the people did not share in its wealth. Politicians prospered, but the jobs left. Americans want great schools for their children, safe neighborhoods for their families. But for too many of our citizens, a different reality exists. An education system flush with cash, but which leaves our young and beautiful students deprived of all knowledge. We've defended other nations' borders while refusing to defend our own.
All themes that have been part of the first 99 days. The president's approval numbers right now in the mid-40s. And while 30 executive orders and 28 bills have been signed into law, 13 of which were bills that were rollbacks from Obama-era regulations, the big three that he campaigned on, health care, tax reform, and immigration reform, have not happened quickly as he had hoped. The president is clearly frustrated to some extent with the Republican Congress. The businessman, now president, learning that the wheels turn slowly in this town, and he sees his biggest wins so far as outside our borders. Earlier today, we spoke about both.
Well, I think I've gotten and developed tremendous relationships throughout the world with the leaders. That's something that you won't, you know, we have this artificial barrier called 100 days, which I'm not a big fan of, but of course,
although you've made a pretty good effort to get a lot of things done in the past few days.
No, I fall victim to it also. But it is very much an artificial barrier, but a lot of things can't be really determined. As an example, I've made tremendous and created great foundations in terms of relationships with China and with Japan and with many, many other countries. You're saying yourself, I saw on the show the other night where you're talking about there's never been any kind of a relationship that we've had with China. Look at what China's doing. They're turning back the coal ships from North Korea. They're putting a lot of pressure on North Korea. Now, I don't know. I have a lot of respect, and I really like President Xi. I don't know that he's going to be able to pull it off. It may have to be a much more difficult ending, to be honest with you. But he is trying. I believe he is trying. And he's a friend of mine, and I really like him a lot. We'll see what happens. But I've set the foundations for a lot of great relationships in the future. I have tremendous feelings for a lot of the people running the countries of this world. And that's a good thing. That's a great thing. Now, you don't measure that in the first 100 days, but those foundations have been set in the first 100 days. Getting a Supreme Court justice, a great one. I think he'll be a great one. But getting him not only nominated, but approved in the first 100 days, which hasn't been done since 1881. And this is going to be something really special. I was reading a couple of reports where every time there's a 5-4 decision in favor of, let's say, what our views are, and this is for the next 30 or 40 years potentially, you know, you can say that you had a major part. And that's why they've always said that having a Supreme Court justice, getting Supreme Court justices confirmed. Now, I could have others, and we'll see what happens. But getting Justice Gorsuch confirmed was, to me, a very big thing. And it will be a very big thing in the future.
You were a registered Democrat for a long time, now Republican President of the United States. And people say, well, President Trump's not an ideologue. He's a pragmatist. How would you describe your political philosophy?
Well, I'm not really an ideologue. I think I'm a person of common sense, I think, more than anything else. And I was a Democrat. I came from a place, you know, I lived in Manhattan. I started in Queens with my parents, and then when I started doing a little bit better and better deals, I was able to get into Manhattan. I moved into Manhattan, and in Manhattan, you know, Republicans are not exactly flourishing. And so I started off as a Democrat, like Ronald Reagan was also a Democrat. And over the years, you know, your views just change somewhat. But I think more than anything else, I'm a person of common sense. I understand what has to be done. I get things done. I've always been a closer. We don't have a lot of closers in politics, and I understand why. It's a very rough system. It's an archaic system. You look at the rules of the Senate, even the rules of the House, but the rules of the Senate and some of the things you have to go through, it's really a bad thing for the country, in my opinion. They are archaic rules. And maybe at some point we're going to have to take those rules on, because for the good of the nation, things are going to have to be different. You can't go through a process like this. It's not fair. It forces you to make bad decisions. I mean, you're really forced into doing things that you would normally not do except for these archaic rules. So,
like what? How would you change them?
Well, you know, you look at the voting and you look at the filibuster system. And it used to be, you know, I always thought a filibuster where you stand up and you talk all day and then somebody else
You don't have to do that
gets up.
anymore.
No, you don't have to do it anymore. Today you say filibuster and guys sit home and they watch television or whatever they do. I think, you know, the filibuster concept is not a good concept to start off with. But if you're going to have filibuster, let somebody stand up for 20 hours and talk and do what they have to do, even if they're reading comic books to everybody. Let them do it. But honestly, we have so many bad concepts in our rules, and it's forcing bad decisions. I really see. I've seen it over the years, where bad decisions are made. Decisions that nobody wanted are made because of archaic rules, and that's something that I think we're going to have to change.
You've really tried to make a lot of moves to shrink the size of government, to shrink the size of the bureaucracy. But people say, why not be concerned about the deficit? Why allow it to balloon with this tax reform deal? And why not touch entitlements? Because unless you do that, you're not really ever going to take a bite out of the spending.
I'm not touching Social Security other than fraud, waste, and abuse. And I will tell you this, look, we just put in, I think, a great tax proposal. The economy is going to boom, and you'll see that. It'll take a period of time, and you're going to have some deficits in the meantime. It's sort of called priming the pump. You have to prime the pump. But look, the numbers just came out yesterday, really, the real numbers. 1.6 GDP last year under President Obama, 1.6%. Now, that is a horrible number. I call up leaders of countries and I say, because I'm so friendly with so many of the leaders, as I said, and I say, how are you doing? Oh, we are not doing well. We are not doing well. We are very upset. GDP is 8%, or GDP is 7%, or GDP is 11%. And here we are at essentially 1% GDP, and we're supposed to be happy about it? No, we have to prime the pump. But, Martha, a lot of other things are happening. We're going to be doing trade bills. You see what's happening with all of the trade deals that we have, which are horrible. We're going to have a lot of money pouring into our country. In addition to which, if we can get GDP from the 1% or 1.5% to, let's say, I say 4, because I really believe it. You know, we're saying 3, but I say 4.
4 by when? And
I say over the next few years, and I say there's no reason we shouldn't be able to get at some point into the future to 5 and above. But we need better trade deals. We lose a fortune with every country. Look, I've been talking about China for years. Yeah. Now, I speak nicely about China because I really do believe they're trying to help out with respect to North Korea. But the trade deficit with China is hundreds of billions of dollars. The trade deficit with Mexico is close to $70 billion. Even with Canada, it's $17 billion, a trade deficit with Canada. I mean, the lumber pouring into our country and all of the things coming in from Canada, and it's not reciprocal. And the word I like to use is reciprocal. If we had a reciprocal nature to our trade deals, it would be a whole different ballgame. But it's very unfair. And we never, ever seem to have a surplus with countries. I mean, every country takes advantage of the United States, and this is not going to happen anymore.
In terms of legislation, you're going to see everywhere on Saturday that there was no major legislation passed in the first 100 days. You have a Republican Congress.
You know, that's really wrong. First of all, we had 28 bills.
Understood.
I was with a reporter the other day who said the same thing. You didn't pass anything. I said, no, we passed 28 bills. And by the way, by tomorrow it could be 32. These are bills passed by the legislature, which I'm saying. I'm not talking about executive orders, which are frankly equally as important. But I'm talking about bills passed. So we have 28. We could have 32 within the next 2 days. But when you think of it, this reporter said, no, I don't believe it. They went back and checked, and he said, you know, you're right. You actually passed.
You are right, and we have looked at the list. I should have been more specific.
How about
health care reform?
Well, how about this?
Tax reform.
Sure, the two biggest
immigration
ones.
reform.
And we're doing very well in them. We're doing
Okay.
very well on them. Look,
But my question for you is about Congress, because when you were running, you said, I'm going to do great deals with Congress. I'm going to have great relationships on Capitol Hill. Are you disappointed with how the Republicans have handled these big issues? Healthcare went down the first time.
Yeah, I'm disappointed.
And there was some suggestion it might happen today, but now it's not going to happen.
I'm disappointed that it doesn't go quicker. I like them a lot. I have great relationships. Don't forget, most of them I didn't even know.
Right.
But many of them, like the Freedom Caucus, came, and I see them and tell them, we love our president. We're doing this for our president. You look at that. You look at the moderates, the same thing. We love our president. They have different views. You know, I have a party that's covering a lot of territory. They have different views. I'm disappointed. I'll tell you, Paul Ryan's trying very, very hard. I think everybody's trying very hard. It is a very tough system. And we're dealing with obstructionists, the Democrats. I don't have one Democratic vote. Obamacare is exploding. Obamacare is dead. Essentially, Obamacare is dead. It's not going to make it, okay? You have states. I went to Tennessee 2 weeks ago. Half of the state doesn't have any insurance companies. You look at Kentucky, what's going on. It's a disaster in terms of, you know, the insurance companies are all going to be pulling out. Many, many states you have no insurance company. Obamacare is dead.
I hear
the
you,
Democrats know it.
you know,
Wait 1 second.
go ahead.
The Democrats know it. And unfortunately, because of the hard time that the Republicans have had getting their hands around this thing, which shouldn't be, because you know, I once said it's complicated, but it's not complicated compared to other things being complicated. It's not that hard. I was disappointed that they didn't have more in line by the time I walked in. But Obamacare took 17 months of brutality to get it approved. They ended up giving Nebraska, the Nebraska deal was where, frankly, that senator, who wasn't even that popular, made one of the best deals, what they did for the state of Nebraska. I will tell you this, I will tell you, it took 17 months to get Obamacare approved. What we're talking about is far better than Obamacare. It's an incredible bill, and we have a good shot at getting it approved by the House. And I told them, I said, look, the 100 days, don't worry about it. You don't have to take a vote today. Take it next week. Take it in 2 weeks and 3 weeks.
But I want to know
take a vote
about
and
the
get it done.
leadership on this, because after the first health care bill did not pass, you said, I have complete confidence in Paul Ryan. Do you still have complete confidence that he can get these moderates on board with the House Freedom Caucus, because you got to get everybody up on the raft?
He's a good man. He's under a tremendous amount of pressure. I do have confidence in him. I have confidence in the Freedom Caucus people, Mark Meadows and Jim Jordan and all of the different, you know, all of the different guys. I have confidence in them. I have great confidence in the moderates. These are great, great people. Martha McSally, she flew jet fighters. She was telling me more about jets than anybody was able to tell me about jets. These are great people. They're great people. They're all great people.
So they're going to get it done?
I believe they're going to get it done. I believe it's going to be, I think maybe next week sometime.
Next week?
They're really coming together. I'll tell you what, they are, it's very interesting. They're getting together, and, you know, they never had to govern. They always had Obama, and they didn't have the Senate. So they could always vote no and do whatever they want to do, and nobody cared. This is for many years. So it didn't matter. Right. All of a sudden, we're governing. And I told them, I said, folks, we're now governing. We have to come together.
A lot of people say they had all those years to put these bills together, these plans together, and they should have had them ready by now.
This was a culture shock for them.
Yeah.
They never had to govern. It didn't matter if they voted yes or no, because Obama was going to reject it anyway. He was going to veto it anyway. And they wouldn't get it through the Senate.
Maybe they didn't know that you were going to win, so they weren't ready.
Well, they probably, some of them knew I was going to win because they saw the crowds. But I had great support from both groups.
Yeah.
Look, these are great people. They have different views, but their views are coming together. And I think you're going to see, again, they're now starting to govern. It's a big difference. Before, whether it's Freedom or the moderates, they could always vote no. They knew the Senate was going to reject it anyway because they didn't have the Senate.
Yeah.
And even if something happened in the Senate, Obama was going to veto it. So it didn't really matter.
So
now it matters.
What do you say to the members of Congress who say, well, you know, the president's approval numbers are in the high 40s.
It's not bad.
I'm not necessarily going to, you know, bend to his will because on tax reform and on health care, I might lose my own election at home, that you don't have the numbers to make it important for them to come along with you.
Let me tell you something. So I have approvals in the high 40s. Every network that you see, with the exception of Fox, Fox has been fair, but every network you see hits me on every topic, made up stories like Russia. They do the Russia, the faux Russia. I call it the fake Russia story. Russia story was made up because they were embarrassed by their loss. They had this tremendous loss, a loss like nobody's ever seen before. The Democrats should never lose the Electoral College because they automatically start with New York, California, and Illinois.
Right.
It's impossible for a Republican to win. And not only did I won easily. So they made up this Russia thing to try and deflect because they're embarrassed by what happened. The Russia's a phony story. All you see is the Russia story, the Russia story. You see all of these other phony stories. It's so bad. And for me to have great approval records in light of all the faux press and the fake press, I think is amazing. Now, I will say this. We had a case where I got involved the last few days in Atlanta. In fact, I'm going there today for Karen. He looked like he was going to win. He had about 56% of the vote. If he gets 50, he wins. We have now a Democratic congressman. I did a robocall. I did some tweets. I did some interviews. He didn't get the number, and I believe she's going to win, and she might win very easily. I'm involved in other congressional races. I think we're going to win.
President making the argument that he has had a positive impact on some of these special elections that we have watched.